Ready? What area is Call to order for the March 12th, 2025 meeting of the Coeur d'Alene Airport Advisory Board. See my site, and I've got, I'm here, of course. Sandra, Bill Givney, Frank Cleary, Tim Conwork, here, Joe Cummings, Patrick O'Halloran, and Larry Hodell. And we are missing Ross Shaw. You have it. Okay. And I would ask everybody to go ahead and do like I'm doing, the silence your cell phone. Go to the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three on the agenda, call for any conflicts of interest amongst board members. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, changes to the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, our first round of public comment. And I would remind anybody that has a comment, we'd appreciate it. Step forward so we can get you clearly recorded. Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of previous meeting from January 8th, 2025. I presume everyone's had a copy on it, reviewed. We approve. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting minutes approved. Item 7, staff reports. Item 8, reports updates from Ardura. Corey, go ahead.
Well, since it's been a little bit since we've gotten together, I will just kind of go through everything if that works. All right. The snow removal equipment, building, design and construction observation, that grant project was physically closed in February of 2025. So that one is done, and I'm going to cross it off for the next ones. The runway 624 rehab and taxiway Bravo 4 project that was completed in 24. We are still ongoing with, we got the reels flight checked on January 7th. We're waiting for the commissioning report from the FAA for that. And then some of the closeout tasks include this thing called an AGIS survey, airport geological information systems. We have to fly it. We fly it in, I think, after we finish the taxiway Charlie project. So it'll be a 2-for-1 because we're hiring an outside consultant to fly, and then it goes on to the FAA's GIS system, and then that would actually physically close that project. So there's no really ongoing work until we get the AGIS survey done. The taxiway N pavement maintenance project that was also done in 2024, I guess the fall, was the year before that? It was the fall of 2024. That also was completed. The FAA closed out the grant in February, and so that one is physically and completely done as well. So taxiway Charlie extension from the Foxtrot to the end of the 6. Current status is Cooney County and Avista entered into the construction agreement for rerouting of that cable. We're going to run it down and along the fence. It kind of runs through the midfield now, and the rerouting puts it out along the fence by Harbs, and then it extends out and across the runway. So in the future, we shouldn't ever have to move it again or reroute it because we're putting it against the fence at the edge of the property. And for ongoing work, we're just, the contractor continues to send over submittals for his products, and we're reviewing them as they come in. There will be a utility rerouting that will happen probably over the next month prior to the project actually physically starting, so that the construction of that project will start on May 19th after our 6 months. So we put this preloading material on because there's some not as suitable material under a chunk of that. So we put kind of a weight on the future subgrade, and then we'll take the weight off after a 6-month loading period. And that 6 months is up on May 19th, or actually I think it's May 14th or something, but that's like a weekend. So we're putting it out for a Monday start date. And I think it's getting my projects mixed up, but I think we would end right about the end of 40-day construction period. So it's close to the end of June, with weather going good and everything flowing along smoothly. There are some intermittent runway closures, and once we get closer to that start date for the project, we will be giving the airport information that can go out to the pilot community for the runway closure. Yes.
Whereabouts does it cross the runway?
What do you mean?
You said the cable goes across the runway.
It comes out across here. I can show you. Yes. The part that we're relocating, so it comes straight up here and then it runs down to serve this. Right now, we're going to run it down and then kind of in this area and then along the fence, and then it will go across this end and back over to make the loop back, instead of now it kind of extends out kind of right where our taxiway is going to be. So we're going to put them out here so that they'll, if there's development or something in this area, we shouldn't have to move it again. Sorry, I was standing.
Oh, that's not conceivable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Corey, would that ever become an issue then if they extend that runway so quick?
Well, yeah.
Would you have to move again or just go right over top?
Yeah, it would, with an extension, you would be moving a lot more utilities to light it down as well. So, I mean, we'd have to move a lot of stuff anyway in that case. Yeah.
The area we're paying to relocate goes to about perpendicular with the runway end. Avista on their own dollar is, I guess it's direct ferry cable that goes along the end of the runway. They are paying to relocate that section to put it in conduit. So in the future, yes, if we did extend it, we'd either, we'd either relocate it, or you could also put it across there and put it in concrete encasement.
How deep do they bury that?
I think it's 36 inches.
Minimum.
Yeah. So. All right, let's see here. So more on the taxiway C upcoming. It's going to be kind of a big project, and it will be impacting everybody in the next May, June timeframe. The turf land in the area, we had submitted a preliminary design to the FAA and a memo to kind of help decide where to put it. And the FAA needed some more direction to give back to us. They promised it around December. We're still waiting, so. The ARF procurement project. Current status is as we bid it, we received no bids right around the beginning of the year. Actually, it was around the 1st of January. The county and the airport plan to wait until August to rebid the project, maybe a less busy time and more people that have made this vehicle. They create them, and the airport here is getting a little bit different than the standard, like Stryker large ARF vehicles that you see. They're getting more of a wildland fire type vehicle, the smaller version. Let's see here. Anyway, let's see, Taxiway Alpha project. So this project actually, we received a signed work order in the middle of February for Ardor to start construction on that, or start designing of that. So we got authorization to work on the project through preliminary design. So we've just started surveying, and the geotechnical engineer went out and did some test pits along Taxiway Alpha. I think we're still surveying. Our guys have been sick this week, but anyway, I think he was out here today. So hopefully we'll get that data soon, and we can start the design work and see how that looks, and then also get the geotech back and see what the underneath of there looks like. So then some ongoing tasks. We are under contract to do an ALP and Exhibit A update, and Exhibit A is an official property map for the airport, and the airport is sold along Ramsey Road, a piece of property to the city for that Ramsey Road reroute, and then also sold some other pieces to other entities in the county. We're just waiting on property pins for the city's surveyor so that we can get that map updated and back to the FAA. Because once something property is released, the FAA has a little bit of a time frame that you have to get the ALP back to them so that it's current. U.S. Forest Service conceptual layout, I think it's on pause. We're waiting for more direction, basically. Air traffic control tower staffing request for proposals. The airport and Ardura we put together an RFQ. It was published over the last probably 4 weeks, I think, in the newspaper. And we had a public or a meeting, kind of like a public meeting, but a meeting with interested parties for air traffic control services. And the quote or the qualification statements were submitted yesterday at the county meeting. And it sounds like you got 3, but we'll let you do that part. Ongoing things is that the airport's gonna go through and review and rank those companies and submit like a recommendation to award to the best qualified or company to staff that tower for the next either 6 months or a year. They submitted, they could submit 2 proposals. They could submit for 6 months of staffing the tower or for year-round services. And lastly, the federal contract tower application assistance, we're on pause for that. So we're happy to help if that application needs to go in. Any questions?
Okay, we'll move on to item D, reports, updates, and airport director.
Absolutely. So just kind of expanding on the RFQ opening for our tower contractors, as Corey said, we solicited for a 6-month contract. We also did a separate schedule for a 12-month. We wanted to see what they would come back at if they were to expand to a full year-round tower. So what the pricing looks like and the structure and planning looks like. There's a few more items involved in that. We did the 12-month, we would be published as towered, which is pretty huge. We would actually have the airspace change published on the chart. So we would either be that class Echo control or a class Bravo here. Sorry, Delta. And we essentially right now, we did get 3 bids back from 3 very qualified companies, including the one that was here last year. So now we're just kind of going through and rating them, ranking them, and then we'll be coming forward with a recommendation on who to award with, and if we want to go with just another 6-month or expand into the 12-month tower with them. So a couple of these other companies are very used to operating in kind of remote, quick deploy locations. So like having a tower like ours, they've built one similar to that and have operated out of them. So they're pretty familiar with that kind of operation, what we need here, which is cool. So excited to get through those.
Yes, got a question for you on that. Do you have any information on the increase in your operations, say over the past 6 months?
I can definitely run those reports. Yeah, I mean, as far as the past 6 months, it definitely tapers off, as we know, in the winter time. This winter, we've definitely seen more of. It hasn't been as big of a dip. Obviously, winter has been kind of mild this year, so there's been more flight days. But I mean, we're still running 100, and some days we're running still 100 and 200 off day through the winter time. So seems to be a little bit more steady through the winter, but as always, it'll pick up. I was running numbers on historical traffic increases over the last, I went and did about a 3 and 4 year span. And if you look year over year, our traffic has actually only increased about 2.6% year over year. So right now we're peaking, last year we peaked around 78,000 operations for the year. This year we expect to be right in that neighborhood, if not a little bit more than that. So not too much growth, as you know, year over year. If you are near the airport within the last couple of years, it's pretty much the same. You wouldn't notice much. I mean, if you look at 10 or 15 years, it's definitely increased since then. But for a good 5-year span, it's not too much of an increase from what it has been.
Right, I've noticed an increase in the winter traffic down with this past winter, last winter. I think some is right because we have real FBO here now. But I'm just curious if you had anything to show what that increase is.
Yeah, I can definitely run the reports and get it to you guys. Definitely.
Does the aerial firefighting people have anything to say about which contractor we get for the tower, since they were paying for it before?
They don't. That was something, the contract is from the airport through the airport. The airport just invoices the Forest Service for their time, essentially, that they're active. So basically what we guarantee to the Forest Service is that they have dedicated rights. So when one of the fire aircraft need to depart, they have priority over everything. They will stay staffed in the tower until the last fire airplane is home. So they'll stay open an hour or two, run overtime on the tower until all fire aircraft are back on base for the night. So those are things they like to have, and they like to pay to have that priority treatment there for them, for the first responders.
Did the operators of Tulsa Field put in a bid?
Yes. Yep. So that's one of the pieces to the reason we have Corey on hold with the federal contract tower system is both the 12-month proposal includes that company helping us through that process, actually getting us into the system. So that's a piece of that. So we're excited to get through those applications. Other than that, we submitted a grant through Idaho State Department of Aeronautics for a LED lighting upgrade for runway 2 and 20 and all the rest of the taxiways. With the runway rehab on 6 and 24, we have the new high intensity LED lights put in there. The whole rest of the airport is pretty dated. All of our transformers, conductor that's in the ground, the light fixtures themselves, they're extremely dated. Even like our PAPIs, our precision approach path indicators, are all incandescent. So this was a notice of funding for, they had a $10 million opportunity for airports like us. This is something that they've had in the past. A lot of airports haven't applied for it. So we went after it. It's all as a good option for an infrastructure upgrade. That's something that we would be facing in well under 5 years, I'd say, in the next 3 years or so on our time. So if we can get that upgrade through them, we would essentially have no incandescent lights on the airport to maintain or manage. Everything would be LED. We'd have fresh conductor, we'd have fresh transformers, everything. So that is 100% funded as well. No, there's no match funds in that grant as well. So I think it's roughly a $1.3 million project to do the entire, all the taxiways, the runway, the PAPIs for 2 and 20 and 24. So with the other projects already getting the LED reels at the end of 2 and 24, we'd be in really good shape. Everything on the airport would be LED at that point. So definitely looking forward to that. We should be hearing from them April and May for a decision on that. As Corey said, grass runway update, we're waiting on the FAA. It kind of, as the last time, we're waiting for them to decide what they want to call it and where they want us to exactly place it. It's basically because it's, in part of the runway safety area, which is okay. They call that a certain thing, and then they call it a certain thing when it's outside the safety area. Ours is in the middle, so it splits those two services. So they're running up their chain to see exactly how they want to designate that and the place where we want to put it. So as soon as they do that, we can move forward with planning and execution, see where we want to schedule it for construction and start installing irrigation, do some rough grading. Other than that, just normal maintenance items. This year, we're definitely, as we roll into nicer weather, the guys are gonna do some more track sealing and definitely a lot more painting. We'll be finishing up the painting on Alpha, getting all the movement lines painted in, all the taxi lanes. Probably repainting November already with that seal coat and people just running over it. It actually marked up a lot of the new yellow paint already on November from last year. So we'll be painting yellow up there again and refreshing any of the runway markings that need that. So yeah, just normal ops from there.
Yes, and do you have any projected start date on either the Alpha upgrade or the turf field installation?
As far as the Alpha upgrade, we would be for the Alpha rehab.
Yeah.
I think the soonest would be like a 2026, 2027 project for Alpha. Yeah, we're basically funding the entire design first, and then we would go with the project for a following year. The turf runway, if we can get a answer from the FAA and finish design on that, I mean, we could possibly be looking at getting some bids on doing that work by the end of this year, if not early next year. I don't think even at this time, if we started it today, that we'd be able to fly it during this season, just with the time it takes the grass to take and come through. So if we can get an early start on it, early next spring, I think we could be able to use it next year.
Didn't you say the FAA office in Helena took a pretty severe hit with these early buyouts?
They did. We did lose 3 of the planning staff through the Helena ADO. So, and that's at planning, that's at compliance, at FISDO. Everyone has suffered losses in their offices right now. So the FAA is definitely running a little bit slow right now. So we're continuing business as usual. We're pushing everything as if it was another day in the office, but we are expecting to see some delays with grants, projects, and paperwork turnaround and stuff like that.
These senior people or more junior?
More senior people just taking early retirement. Yeah.
So we lost the institutional memory of those people.
So it might take a while for them to figure out what to call this.
We're gonna call it something if we want to get it going. That's all I have, unless you guys have any other questions. Oh, sorry, I thought Kirk was gonna be here. So yes, we are gonna be having an actual air show this year, June 28th. This is an air show. It's being put on by Coeur d'Alene Aviation. It is a private event in that they're putting it on, funding it, everything. The airport is supporting it, and the airport being the airport essentially. So we're going to be there running airport ops, ARF, crash fire. That's all the required stuff we have to do for it. He'll have his own staff for security, announcing, their own air boss, like the whole thing. He's actually hired a production company that's coming in and going to curate the entire show. They're the same people that put on Reno. They do the Reno Air Show. They do part of Oshkosh. They do a lot of big name air shows. So they've done it before. They're bringing a pretty A-list of actors of performances coming in. So I think right now we're at 6 performers from P-51 Mustang Aerobatics, Corsair Aerobatics. There's a Long-Easy Aerobatics. A Sukhoi 27 is going to be there doing aerobatics. An RV-8 is going to be there doing his show. So, and from there, they're also working on military support. Usually they don't have that firmed up until you get closer to the event. They'll work it into their schedule, but basically they just fill in between those paid performances with military support. So they're hoping to get something, doing flybys, and I mean, it could be F-18s. We've invited the F-35s back up. It could be those guys coming back up. So it'll be full vendors, everything. It'll be over on the Coeur d'Alene Aviation ramp and all in front of there. So as it moves along, I think he's releasing marketing this week, so we'll start to see it on all the social media, there's flyers and everywhere. They promote this thing, definitely outside of even our community. So it should be a pretty cool show, having an actual air show here.
All right. Thank you, Gus. And any questions? On to item 8, Coeur d'Alene Airport Association update. Gary, you're on.
Yeah, we had a meeting last night and it went pretty well. We were gonna have Gene Soper give us a little presentation, but he kind of got on the back burner. But we're gonna put him on next month. So he's gonna be first man up next month. And then we have another AME that will give us a little presentation next month also, short list. And then we're gonna have a pancake breakfast on May 14th. So that'll be over at the Bird Space Museum over here. So we're gonna kind of have that. And then our scholarship program is up and running, so that's good. And that's about it. We had Jim Walsh is working on a noise fly friendly program, which is going along pretty good. And then I've been working with Gaston for a viewing stand, and it looks like we have that pretty well lined up for the north, right off of Ramsey Road there. It's just gonna come in a little bit off of Ramsey, and they're gonna move the pad over where the old control tower trailer was. And then we'll have, from what I understand, Phil said he has, or Gaston has some extra steel. And so we have some of the stuff that we can use if we want to use that stuff. So that's coming along pretty well, which has been a long project. It seems like we've been working on this for 6 or 7 years now.
What's going to be the finance?
Pardon me?
How is that going to be paid for?
If we can do everything we want to do, we're not going to have to put any money up for it unless we want to have something Cadillac style building. You know, in other words, if we have if we decide that we want a better building that which is fine with me with what Phil's got, Gaston's got as far as materials, so we'd have to buy some roofing material maybe. So, and maybe some picnic tables and, stuff like that. But we won't have any water out there. All we have is electricity. So I don't know if we'll have to do porta potties out there or what we'll have to do something like that. And I don't know how much interest there's going to be on something like that. It'd be right at the end of 624 and 20. So it's going to be a beautiful spot for viewing airplanes coming and going. And then the Forest Service, I guess they're going to move their tanker base to the west of that viewing stand over there by the control tower. And then the helicopter base is going to be where the tanker base is now, I understand. So that's going to have a lot of activity for that. If, people want to come out and look at the tankers, view all that kind of stuff, which I think, once we get it up and running, and people get to know about it, and they're going to say, oh yeah, let's go out there and have lunch, and we can have other events maybe out there, but it'll be all fenced in, so it will be public access, but there will be I don't think there'll be any airport access there.
Right, yeah, we'll realign the fence there, so it's all on the street side.
So there won't be any, I guess you'd have to have some kind of access on the Ramsey into your yard or something, but you already have that, so I think it's coming along pretty nicely, actually. I'm pretty happy with it. So as mentioned, Jim Walsh was working on the Fly Friendly program, and he might have something to say. You got something to say about that, Jim? Yes, sir.
Update on the noise issue with totally been proactive on it, mainly Gaston, myself, working the tentacles of this project, which is expanding. So where we're at right now, we had a recent meeting involved with corporate guys here on the airport, to include Keith Lang from Aganon, Captain Salza here representing the smaller corporate jets, discussing alternative approach issues and design, of which Gaston is looking into an outside vendor that is actually working with the FAA to redo GPS approaches and stuff like that. So I'm not a pilot and don't know the particulars of all this approach stuff, but we are coordinating it. I don't know, Gaston, I can yield my time to Gaston and he can explain exactly what we discussed as far as the pilot stuff.
I think we,
It's on our agenda.
yeah, they actually have that as a line. So I can
We'll
explain
get to that.
So that's where we're at with it. We didn't want to really present a whole plan yet before we have it all together. So we wanted to have the kiosk stuff and the scanning stuff and the approaches and the no-fly zones, voluntary fly zones, all under one package, and then we'll present it to you guys and say, hey, here's what we've been working on. And then, I don't know, put it out for public comment of some sort, see if any, the little airplanes have any ideas on changes and no-fly type stuff. So that's where we're at on it. But we are working on it. So I just want to let you guys know that it's not a dead issue. So yeah, that's got it.
Harry, would you confirm the pancake?
That
I thought
was
you said the
actually
14th.
24th.
24th, yes.
I mean, take care of
I was
it.
thinking.
Yeah, that's a, 24th is a Saturday.
I'm tired.
That makes sense.
Yes, sorry about that. I got all these numbers down here and I'm confused. So, yeah, that's, and then, Rachel, our other MEA on the airport is gonna have a meeting on April 12th for medical equipment you need to have on board your aircraft for medical purposes, for accident, whatever. So that's gonna be over at Fort Lane Aviation's facility. That's all I have.
Yeah, I think specifically what you talked about was depending on the purpose of your flight. When
Right.
you're doing a long cross country, you're going into the back country or whatnot.
Right.
It'd be a list of emergency items you would probably want to have packed on your airplane in case you were forced down or got stranded somewhere. Yeah.
Which, you want a blanket to go around you in case you get into shock or something, or somebody can't get to you. All that stuff. So tourniquets, battle damage, whatever.
And Rachel is that her name, is it Rachel?
Rachel, yeah.
Rachel Ferraro.
Ferraro.
She's our new medical examiner here on the field. And she's located up at Coeur d'Alene Aviation. And she said she's had quite a good start. So it's kind of neat to see people fly in for medicals, and she's starting to get a lot of attention that way. Very nice lady. She gave a presentation on bariatric issues for pilots. If you're fighting a weight issue, how that might impact you trying to keep your medical with the FAA. And she indicated she's very willing to work with people on those issues to help mitigate those issues so they don't run into a problem with the FAA. Yeah,
Her husband flies for me, so.
that's right.
And when he's not flying, he's over there, he's the assistant vet, so.
All right.
I go over there and get checked in by him.
He's your mass cleaner. There was one other thing in the meeting you mentioned. I didn't quite get all of it. Mike Kincaid talked about a program he's got going.
Oh,
With
yeah,
the high
that was
schools.
the other thing. He has a STEM program, and that's basically a volunteer program by aviation pilots and airplanes on the field. And if you wanted to donate your airplane, then they take high school students up for flights and they give them a little certificate that they got, give them a little incentive to go out and get a pilot's license or mechanic license or whatever. So, that's the program that he's put together.
Didn't he mention there was some kind of something they had to do on the web, some kind of pre-flight course that they had to go through.
Yeah, there's some kind of
Qualified for
a test, I'm gonna call it a test before you go out, and, you know, don't grab the controls and, you know, do that kind of stuff. So I think that was part of that. So it was a pre-flight test that you had to go through and be aware that you can't do certain things in the airplane when you're flying around.
It sounded like kind of a neat idea, something we talked about for a long time, to reach down into the high schools and find kids that are interested in flying and say, hey, we've got a way for you to get introduced to it. And I think that's a great idea, because I always wanted to learn to fly when I was a kid. Didn't have anything like that, and had to wait till I was in my 30s, you know, to really find a way in. And it's kind of a nice idea if we can start getting some of these kids, 15, 16 years old, that have an active interest, and bring them up here and let them see if they really have an appetite for it. And if they do, I'm sure Mike, if anybody, will find a way to feed that appetite to keep going. So,
And Mike, I guess, I'm assuming that Mike's running that program.
I believe he is. Yeah, he had some documents he told me with it. He said he didn't want to go all the way through them. I'm sure we'll hear more about it as it goes along.
Okay,
Thank you, Harry.
okay.
I guess we'll move on to item 9, our official business. Item A, update on the composition of the airport advisory board. And we asked his help here for that. Our last meeting, we talked about, you know, possibly increasing the voting members from 7 to 9. We didn't really have a very good understanding as to why it was ever set up that way in the first place. And a couple of weeks after that meeting, Gaston and I were invited down commissioners to do an update for the airport. And this item came up with discussion. I was able to ask the commissioners directly, you know, why it was this way. And I'd asked it before. Bruce, I don't think, was really aware in the first place. But it turns out at the point that this board was, well, it actually probably would have been before this board was recomposed. They had decided that they wanted to limit their voting memberships on all their advisory boards to 7. And they said, well, we have alternates, not all of the boards have alternates, but they, of course, felt this is one that should have alternates. And so it was set up that way. And they indicated at that time that they're not really receptive to the idea of changing it from 7 to 9, which we said, fine. I said, I can understand that. I think if somebody would have explained that in the first place, I wouldn't have satisfied with it, but nobody just wanted to ask a question. Cassie, you want to add anything on that?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, I think just to keep continuity between all the advisory boards, they were looking to keep them all at the 7-member vote.
Having said that, we've gone through the bylaws as they were recomposed, I think in August 2023. And I've been coming to these meetings long enough to see the functionality of this advisory board a little bit all over the map. I can remember coming into meetings years ago when Jim Thorpe was chair and you guys would be reviewing lease applications. And you know, the advisory board used to have fiat over those lease applications. I can remember seeing plans laid out, talking about colors of hangars and size of doors and whatnot. Of course, we haven't seen that in recent years. And as Gaston pointed out, we have what's community development that basically is in charge of that, and the airport. And we were admonished as an advisory board that our function was strictly advisory. We really had no regulatory function anyway. Yet they still have a piece of that in the bylaws. And it's still our intention to sit down with Leslie and go through those and see if we can't clean them up a little bit, kind of focus the scope of the advisory board the way I think they intended it to, but inadvertently left some things in there that you know, it makes me feel like, yeah, it's in there, we're not doing it, but you know, should we be doing it? There are things in there I don't think we really should be. So that was all I wanted to say on item A. Anybody wants to have a discussion about that, I'm sure we can carry that from Leslie at some future date. But you now are liaison for the county.
I think anything that stands out in the bylaws that in particular that.
Well, you know, I guess. You know, the bylaws are intentionally a broad brush. I understand that they have to. But, for example, item C, review and provide recommendations regarding discretionary land use permits proposed within the boundaries of the airport properties. that's one of those things that we can discuss in a general way, but in terms of somebody comes to Gaston with a proposal to lease property, say, for example, what happened with the electronics company up here, having a senior moment. I don't believe we ever reviewed anything on that. I don't know that it would have been necessary for us to review that. At any rate, it wasn't done. Review each development request and make recommendations to ensure compliance with airport rules and standards. That's another one that's, I think was really outside the scope of what Bruce tried to explain to us when the board was reproposed. And again, that's one of those things where we already have regulatory functions within the county to handle that. I don't know if we really need to be stepping into. But it introduced a little bit of confusion to me because I thought, are we really doing the job that we're supposed to be doing? Or was this just something they put in there, but since the functionality of the board has changed to strictly advisory, that it really became a moot issue for us to be involved in those. So those are some of the things that I wanted to visit with her on.
It was advisory before. It's just that the management at the time operated differently and wanted that input. And so there was a small group that had building knowledge, electrical knowledge, all that stuff. That would help advise. They didn't make the decisions. They weren't the yes or no, go or no.
Right.
And they worked with the airport staff. And that with the change in administration, that went away. I mean, it just went away. So the role hasn't changed. I mean, as far as having any authority, they're still just advisory.
I guess I'm just going to what the functionality of the board is now versus documentation. So.
Yeah, be careful when you say the county has a department to handle that. They do, off airport. Because years ago, we had them come back and say, we're not signing off on your hangars until you put trees in between the taxiway and your hangars. We explained to them, trees are very attractive, which is hazard for aircraft, and we don't do that. Besides that, it's against federal regulations. So we went through 2 years of arguing on something that should have never been. That's one of the reasons why we kind of, that's because you have aviation people looking at development. Well, the comparative was used. We got airport over here in Washington that has a bunch of blue hangars and some bright green ones. The guy wants to paint one orange. Well, you have to let that happen. We agreed to work toward using earth tones at the airport. I mean, it's simple things like that. But when a proposal comes down, you've got aviation-minded people, being it operators, pilots, going, well, this isn't a good idea. And that's really why it was there. It was strictly advisory, but it was from an airport pilot operator perspective.
Well, yeah, and I would say we're always here to be in a position of advocacy for whatever the board decides it should be. But in terms of the way it's written in here, it's almost regulatory. We're not really that. At the time that you were talking about the trees between the hangars, you were an airport employee. Of course, you and Greg saw that. So, that's something we can't allow anyway. It's sort of the board, we're justifying backing you up on that. I guess I look at these bylaws and I say, well, it seems like there's just a little bit of, again, it's a broad brush, but there's a few things in there that we can tidy up to say, okay, now we have a more crystalline approach to how we conduct the advisory board in line with what the commissioners, I think, intended in the first place. And that's my only meaning. Gaston and I talked about it, and he did point out that you certainly have agencies within the county that are focused on the regulatory aspects of this, and that's really their function. But again, I can remember coming to these meetings, and I remember Jim sitting there with the plans, basically saying this needs to change, that needs to change. I thought, holy cow, I'm not an architect, and I certainly wouldn't want to be expected to function that way. I could come back like in your instance with the trees, how far apart the hangars go, things like that, and say, well, the advisory board thinks based on our long-term plan, to optimize use of space at the airport, that we would say we don't want hangars 30 feet apart if we can put them 10 feet apart, for example. But then that would be strictly a recommendation, which have no regulatory authorities, so.
Yeah.
You understand?
Well,
what I'm
I agree.
saying? Absolutely. Anyway, that's all I had on that. So we'll move on to item B, and this is truly going to blow the gas this quarter. Recommendations on addition of a new instrument approach procedure for running 2-4. As was alluded to earlier, that's one of the options we're looking at to try and handle some of the traffic concerns we have over in certain parts of Haiti to try and keep noise levels in acceptable minimum. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gaston.
Absolutely. So we wanted to bring it to the advisory board, basically for discussion and then ultimately a recommendation of how this board feels on the development of, or looking into the future development of approaches. What during the different like noise studies and town halls we've had on different areas that are affected by noise, one of the biggest things that are talked about is the circling traffic of Haiti and over the honeysuckle area. Basically, everyone is circling the line for 2-4 and the larger jet traffic. So we're looking at different ways that we could mitigate that with adding approaches to 2-4, which currently does not have an approach. The FAA has never developed an approach for that, and for a reason, because of the terrain off the end of runway 2-4. With that, when I was at MBAA this last year, there was a company that privately develops GPS approaches and can act as the FAA. They're the only authorized private company to act literally as they're the FAA. They can publish approaches, they can do obstruction analysis, they can do flight checks, everything the FAA can do. So they had said, well, hey, we can get a GPS approach in there for you guys on 2-4. Okay. One of the things they have not been able to guarantee is what that approach would look like and what kind of approach profile that would look like. So I thought it'd be prudent to get a hold of different, larger turbine operators, Keith and Aaron and Larry was there as well, just different viewpoints on, the smaller aircraft could definitely utilize something like that, but can a jet flying in category D, category C utilize an approach like that coming in off 2-4? And the answer is it would be pretty challenging based, from their observations. And I have not been assured from this company that they could produce an approach that would be available to category A through D aircraft off of 2-4. So with that, the pricing is not bad to develop something like that. There's a lot of legwork that goes into it. It takes about 12 to 14 months of surveys and analysis and meetings and pilot meetings and everything else to develop something like that. I don't want to go, I guess my position is I wouldn't want to go down that road unless we had some guarantees on what preliminarily they think the profile would look like coming in here. It's roughly, you're looking at about $70,000 to develop a full GPS published approach. That means it's ready, it's in the book, it's ready to be flown. Which, if it was available to all those categories of aircraft, it is another tool in our tool belt to use to come in here. I don't know that that's possible to use it the way that we want to use it. If we spend that money, I would want it to, so it's available to everyone and we can mitigate those issues. There are other ways to mitigate the issues we've had as well. I mean, the tower is the biggest one. Going to a 12-month tower, that would just reinforce that with different airspace over the airport. Like there are different tools we can use to do that. This was just being one of them. We wanted to put it out to discussion with you guys and with anyone in the public that had any input on what that would look like. And if that's something we really want to look at. Me personally, I would want to regroup with that company and say, is there an option where we can have you do a preliminary study and give us a report on, yes, we can ensure that this is what we will deliver based on our 10,000 foot view of this to see if it's something we would want to go forward with. So with that, available, any questions and discussion with you guys?
You said you need to go back to them to ask them if they'd be willing to do that, right? Like
yes. So I have their main proposal that is, it just says the development of a GPS approach into 2-4, possibly 2-0. They can also evaluate our current approaches. Which those are, they've been there for as long as they've been there. They've been fine. That was another thing we talked about with the different flight departments. So they offer a whole menu of services, and one of those, like based on your recommendation tonight, if we want to continue with this, is get a hold of them and see if they can, if that's something that is actually feasible or not, and what we would get with that.
So Gaston, if we're to move forward with a cursory review of this, what do you think the approach would be? I mean, you've got the Lear guys, you've got the Gulfstream guys, you got a mix of jet aircraft, the Platypuses and so on. If it turns out we spend $70,000 for an approach that only 20% of that group can use,
Right.
is that a wise investment for us?
No, and that's how I feel as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I don't want to go do. I don't want to jump into this and start down the road, and in 10 months we figure out that it's category 8 aircraft only, because it's so steep. And that's our concern, is the proximity of the terrain and how steep the approach would have to be. Like, how would they be routing people to come down to get them to send it down to the runway on a downhill runway that are coming in, hot and fast. So,
Yes, if we went to a 12-month tower, would that then obviate the issue anyway? Would we need to be concerned about having?
it would alleviate most of it, just having controlled airspace. I mean, we still have our standard procedures to come in and out of the airport, but the tower is definitely a tool that we can advise, certain procedures. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the pilot to make the decision of how they want to come in here safely at the end of the day, but the tower can definitely offer different options that could mitigate some of those areas. And those are discussions working with Jim, as we develop these, kind of noise sensitive areas and stuff, we can sit those down with the advisory board, with the tower contractors, and say, here is what we're trying to address. Even last year with the tower, they experimented with different traffic patterns and everything, but they never really had a graphic of, we would like it if airplanes, we're 1,000 feet above in this area. So that's something we're definitely working with the contractors this year on. So I guess just wanted to get the temperature from the board, from anyone in the public that might have some comment on it, and see how we would like to move forward, if we're interested in seeing if they would do that, or if we at this point would rather move on to other things. So
Even if you did have an instrument approach procedure, spend the money, have it developed, would the pilot still have the discretion to not follow that? Would be voluntary.
he could, depending on the flight rules he was under. Yeah.
So basically the same discretion they got with the tower operating.
Right. If they did somehow come up with an approach that would fit all those categories of aircraft, I mean, someone would, if their aircraft can meet the performance of that approach, then, it would be beneficial to get someone down through the weather on runway 24 rather than have them circling on 24 from a runway 6 approach. So there would be a certain increase of safety there. I just, based on the group, we didn't really see how they could do that, or how cumbersome that approach would be.
If they'll guarantee that for free, I mean,
Right.
they're gonna want some money.
Right. Category A through D.
Yeah, I mean, how much are you willing to spend for preliminary study?
Well,
Gives you a-
based on their, once again, they haven't given me a price, I haven't approached them with this. They were charging $5,000 per approach to evaluate our current approaches. So I would imagine a cursory brush stroke at a new approach would be somewhere around that, but I wouldn't expect much detail for 5,000.
How would you categorize the noise complaints that you get? Would you say most of them are from jets?
I would say most of them that I get are from piston traffic. Doing touch and goes. It's mostly the touch and goes that are calling. Very minimal calls are from turbine traffic in and out of here. The ones that do call are in the same area. They're always on that downwind to basically turn right over Hayden as they're descending down through there. I would say half of those are people calling about a fire aircraft that don't know it's a fire aircraft. As soon as they find out it's a tanker, they're like, oh, sorry, yep, no, we're good. So there is definitely a concern. It's not necessarily with the turbine traffic, it's not a noise thing. A lot of them are calling just saying, why is this airplane so low over me? They see a big airplane and they're wondering why it's a too low complaint rather than a noise complaint. So,
You and I have had the discussion about the traffic that I observed. And I know the difference between an air tanker and when it's not. And so, it's, from my perspective, I think it depends where you are, what you're hearing. Like, if you're across the lake, kind of what would that be, northwest, that's smaller touch and go planes that are usually circling around up there. That I'll see from where I am. What's happening with me is just jets coming over the top and then dropping over and making that big curve and setting up for a landing, And so, those do come with some frequency as the season gets going. And, they are flying at the right altitude is my assumption. They're not like, flying at somewhere they shouldn't be, but it's annoying as hell. And they do come in, pairs. It seems like they just all of a sudden there'll be a whole string of them will come in, and it won't be air tankers, because I love seeing those. I think that's really cool. But that noise, it happens, and I think it's that Honeysuckle Bay. There's something about the sound dynamics over that lake in that area where I live up from it. You can just hear it. I mean, in the wintertime, I hear wolves, howling over way out in the prairie. It just echoes up through that hillside. And so when you do get planes, they might be flying at the right altitude and all the right things, but what you're getting is a big sound bounce that's coming back.
And that's one thing, like I said, with the tower, it gives us different tools, even with those circling approaches, to have them extend a little bit. Even adding a mile on your final leg, where you're getting out and around the houses. There's different things that we can look at doing to mitigate some of that.
So, what he's referencing though specifically is a base leg approach to forward 7.
Right.
I just sent off a request to a buddy of mine that does that kind of work, or he did do it. And he said it would most likely end up being an RNT, probably 0.3 approach and authorization required, which most light aircraft are not going to want to go through all that.
Yeah. It'll be like going into Juneau on a special approach. There's all kinds of equipment. We're not gonna have it in the small airplanes. I'm just kind of skeptical about it myself. That's just me. I'm not up to flying airplanes.
So guys, this is just one part of what we're trying to do with the noise issue as going forward. And it would be my recommendation, since working on this, that maybe the board authorize an X amount of money to take a look at what this company is willing to propose. And if it is actually a good concept, where we could present that to guys like Aaron, Keith, and others that I have no idea about this circle land stuff, but I think maybe we should take a look at it a little bit as far as which way we're pushing. But this is like the first step that we're really, really working on.
And I don't know that there's a dollar amount essentially tied to that. I can definitely report back. I think the first step would be me reporting this back to that company and seeing, we might be able to get this answer for no money. Can we have some more assurances in the proposal and actually bring the proposal forward? So I think we need to do a little bit more digging, honestly, with them and see what we're actually looking at. So assurances.
This is not the first time that this issue has come before the airport. I mean, in the past 30 years, I've had this is the 6th time it's actually been officially discussed. I would think it would behoove us to, we need to spend some money and take a look at this and find out what the reality of it is and what the basic parameters would be that they feel would be. I don't think this is going to go away mean, North Idaho's growing, the airport's gonna grow to accommodate the community, and this particular question is not just gonna disappear. So I think we should spend, whatever that dollar amount is, I don't know, but I think we should put some money and some effort toward, understanding what the reality of an approach to 2.4 is, so we can look at it, so we can get with the jet operators and some of these other folks and say, okay, here's what we have. It's a yay or a nay. But right now, we're all guessing. And as many times as it's come to the airport, I think maybe now's the time that we should recommend that, or you guys should recommend that they spend some money and really look into it. Now, 70,000, no, but where is that? Is it 5,000 or 10 grand? I don't know. But I don't think this aggression's gonna go away.
So guys, I got one comment. What would this look like if we put an extension on that runway? Is that gonna
It
be?
would it would worsen.
Yeah, it would worsen. So
Yeah.
that might be a, look at it and say, well, it's possible now, but if we extend that thing, it's gonna be impossible.
Absolutely. They could move it right into terrain, yeah.
So back in 2012, I don't know, until they were talking about this, the last time we did an official study, it was attached to our master plan. And I don't know if you were with TNO or if you were in your in-between time. But, so we looked at what would be the ultimate for 624. And God, as I remember, it was like 600 feet to the west and 1,000 feet to or 600 to the east and 1,000 feet to the west, whatever it was. And if I remember, it was based on a Cat 2 approach, Cat 2 landing system. So in a nutshell, they came back and said, well, yeah, you can do it if the county will buy the top of those 5 mountains and cut them off 700 feet. Now, and so what happened was they said, well, and this really doesn't make any sense, especially if we move the runway over to 600 feet. And one of the last things that they looked at was, well, what kind of approach we put in it? And backcourse marker and the whole bit, and we couldn't even come close to a standard approach. The angle was gonna be too high. So,
It's like 5 degrees.
yeah, it was close to that. So my guess is we're gonna come back with probably something that's not really feasible for us to use. But I think
Palm Springs.
the airport's probably at the point to where they should say, let's spend some money and really find out. That's just my 2 cents.
I think it's much more feasible.
Authorization
if it's
required
up
for you
to
to
2.0.
approve and the airplane.
Approaching 2.0 could come right down the valley. And the only, obviously there is a shoulder runway.
So you like it for 6,000? Yeah.
That's true.
I agree. Just take a look at the approach.
So I was only gonna say this, it would seem the value of the facility, only, it doesn't meet all classes of aircraft, just based on the correlation between the type of aircraft that are driving most complaints versus what this does start to solve, if anything, there's a magnetic piece of what's.
Does doing even a preliminary review, spending a little bit of money, serve any longer term purpose in terms of your next revision to the master plan? Or does that feed into the information relevant for consideration there? Like, it's not just wasted money, even if it's just a little bit of money, you can use it in your next master plan planning.
Well, it could, but you don't know that at this point.
Because it
until
rules
you
out,
get-
like, well, we can't.
Until you get a cursory back, you may get a cursory back that you may look at it and say, it's not worth going any further. Or you may get a cursory back that'll say, well, maybe. So, and that's really up to management and board to pursue that at that time, but right now, everyone's guessing. And I don't like to guess, it'd be nice to have something we could actually base an intelligent yes or no.
Yes, and we've discussed this before, but there are gonna be opportunities in the future to extend 2.4. And it's very likely to happen sometime in the not too distant future. If I understand this correctly, if that happens, then it really negates this idea of creating an approach for that runway. Is that
It makes
correct?
it more challenging, yes, absolutely.
Make it
You're
more
moving your
challenging, or
threshold
literally
600 feet.
pretty much impossible with the glide, what do you thought? 5% glide slope?
Yeah, it was at least,
Yeah, it was 5. Yeah. Sounds like me.
and the minimums were
Too high.
still got awful. I mean,
I think this is one of those drain the swamp alligator questions. Really, the idea is to keep traffic, piston and jet off the top of that 8 meter flow plus. And that's primary.
Absolutely.
So should we really be seeking other solutions for that other than this? If they exist, part of which is if we have a 12-month tower operation, direct the tower to say, these are zones that we want to keep traffic off. Would that be a more practical approach?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the tools, yeah.
So why haven't we changed the traffic pattern and published it for right traffic for 2-4?
We actually, with the tower, last year, for a portion of the season, they ran traffic in that way. So, it would be, basically, if we do go to a 12-month, which this would be the perfect time to look at traffic pattern change. When the tower is operational, obviously it's at the tower's discretion, but when the tower's closed, then we would have those new published traffic patterns going one way or the other. So that would be the time that we could implement something like that, if we wanted to actually make a change.
If we got a noise problem now, why aren't we putting them on the right traffic?
Because we're on the tower, and what you're doing is you're putting left traffic into right traffic. One of those dangerous things you can do with an airport configuration like this, that's why the FAA would never let us do it. You can do it with a tower. Because you have someone up there.
Okay.
But when you're facing airplanes into each other, for 2-4 and for 2-0, they kind of frown on that.
We would have to, yeah, it's an interesting mix. We would have to flip both patterns. And have it.
You have to go inside the field with 220, correct? Is that, do you think that's an impractical thing to do? Or?
Not totally. I mean, the times they were running it last year, it worked pretty well. There were different instances when it wouldn't work. I mean, there's different options. One of the options that Keith had brought up was, obviously turbine traffic exempt from land and hold short, but at a certain tailwind component, you can still land on runway 6, even if traffic is coming in for 2-0. That was it wasn't a complaint, but he's like, they were still mixing jets with small traffic coming in 2-0 and 2-4 at the same time in the same space. So why were they not bringing jets in and landing them in calmer winds on 6, land and hold short of 2-0, land and hold short of Bravo 3, and which most of them turn off there anyway. I mean, that most of them would need performance to do that and then depart on 2-4. So now they're coming in over the prairie and departing over the prairie. They never circle around that way. So there's, like I said, there's different things that we can do that we did not do last year with the tower. So all of these things are in our briefing coming forward with them.
It's been studied many a time in the past 30 years, the configuration for traffic here. We've never come out on top, that's why it's never changed. Until we have a tower, we have the safest traffic patterns we can have at this airport. And we have enough problem with what we have, and they're safe.
The problem was putting in the second runway.
Well, I mean, people laugh at it, but really extending 220 to 6,000 feet does a lot for your traffic patterns here, the utility of your airport, and they're not gonna give you an approach at a 5,000 foot, 7,500 or 75 foot wide runway, but you'll get one at a 6,000 foot at 100 foot wide. But that's another discussion.
Almost sounds to me like we ought to be making a recommendation on having a 12-month tower. I mean, that's another, I mean, that's, you and I have talked about this.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
it seems like,
once we review these proposals, I mean, just doing a first review, that's the direction I'm moving, based on what we're seeing.
well, we've got this warrant for action. I'm not sure what we should do here, fellas. Anybody have a,
table it.
you want to just defer on
Do
this?
another time.
Table it?
That's up, I'm a non-voting member. I'm here for discussion.
No, but you got a lot of good information. You got the front.
Well, I would think you guys would want to, maybe jump behind and support the direction the gas wants to go. I don't know.
Yeah, but just what I was gonna ask, so what might be your preference here?
I'm fine with that. I mean, I do think it's at least worth the conversation with them, see if they can modify a proposal that we can then present to you guys, on what can they promise, what can they not, and we can make a more educated decision based on that, and put it to bed for good, or move forward with something.
Okay, would you want us to table this until next month or at some other point, some other meeting in the future?
Yes, and it's your budget. I mean, you know what you might have to spend on this thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I thought it would be a good item, to bring to the advisory board, just kind of get everyone.
I like Phil's.
Yep.
I support you having the ability to flesh this stuff out. We sit here and argue, talk about it all night.
Right. Well,
We're
he
not
just,
gonna get anywhere, because we're missing that one piece of information that he wants to go get.
we're just looking at a go, no go from us. If somebody.
Well, I make a motion to go with that.
Second,
I second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Excellent.
You have to do a little wordsmithing on that.
I'll leave that to the expert. The motion is technically to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners of Gaston proceed on a preliminary proposal from this vendor. On
Which
one,
at
on
this
one,
point, I would not bring that proposal forward to them. The proposal we have at hand is not what I would bring to the board yet, so.
no, but I mean, you're looking at something, we're just making a recommendation that you make a proposal to the county commissioners to do a preliminary study on the establishment of the new instrument approach for runway 24. Yeah. All righty, if we're done with that, no more questions, no more discussion. Moving on to item C. This is one we've been discussing. We talked about expanding the scope and retitling the Northside Development Committee that we put together several months ago. And the idea behind that was to basically focus on opportunities on the north side, but there's still a lot of fallow ground on the south side. We thought rather than limit that committee, since it's composed of, we've got a subcommittee from the advisory board, we've got vendors on the field and some other folks that are involved in that committee, that we should just incorporate that into a KCOE development committee, the entire airport. And that's really what we want to do with item C. So with that, open for discussion. Any more questions?
I have a question. Could you show me on the map what areas that would be?
Well, it would be the entire airport.
The
Everything,
entire airport.
yeah, everything within the boundary lines. And basically, it's just a seedbed for development as we move along. You know, suggestions that can be made to Gaston and to the county commissioners as to what opportunities there may be to, for example, do some commercial development here, hangar development down there, et cetera. Just kind of expand our scope from the north side, which would be north of 624 to the entire.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
So I have another question. What's the output from the subcommittee? What is the work product that you come back with?
We haven't had a committee report yet.
We've had 2 meetings, I believe, and basically, we have talked a little bit about the whole airport, but basically, the plan has been so far is that Gaston will probably fill us in better on this, but the Forest Service is really interested in creating a master firefighter base here, using the area of the northeast to build more ramp, hangars. Also, they were even talking about like a barracks to house people, because they just feel like they need more space. So that's been basically what we've discussed so far. And how it would be developed and by who is yet to be determined. Also, just in a meeting, generally, we've talked about what's going on around there. Just haven't So that's kind of the report. I think going forward too with, I mean, calling it the development committee, we can actually build probably minutes, just like do minutes on the meeting to attach to the report. So at least we, you know, everyone on the advisory board can see what was discussed and, you know, what we reviewed, then any questions we can review during the normal meetings. We can definitely do that.
Of course, the idea is, you know, that the entire board then becomes participatory in the discussions. Once they bring forth ideas that they have, we can discuss them in general, and as we need to make recommendations to BOCC as to what opportunities they might want to take advantage of.
Absolutely.
So, with that, I'll make a motion that we expand the scope and retitle the Northside Development Committee to the KCOE Development Committee.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Yeah,
Promotion.
last item, just asking everybody to have any input they would have on agenda items for next meeting, by April 2nd. You've got my email address, you've got my phone number, you can text me anything that pops into your mind that you think might be something worthwhile for the board to discuss. Please feel free to share and pass the muster. We'll have it on the agenda to discuss it. Finally, item 10, second period of public comment. Hearing none, I'm going to move to adjournment. Meeting is adjourned. All right.